topic is bond characteristics. In bond characteristic, first we are having that is bond energy. Bond energy. Now what is bond energy? The amount of energy required for the 1 mole of atom, for the 1 mole of the atom or the bond, that is called the bond energy. Or we can also say the amount of energy required for the composition or decomposition of a bond, that is called the bond energy. In bond energy we are having two things. Number one, that is making of the bond, or we can say composition of the bond, and number two is decomposition of the bond. Number one is composition of the bond and another the decomposition of the bond. Now what is composition of the bond, or we can see the making of the bond, like here is H plus H, we make that is the H2, right? This is the composition of bond. Now in this, the energy releases during the composition of bond, that called exothermic reaction. Like the energy releases for making this bond, that is called an exothermic reaction, right? Like here, if we are having chlorine plus chlorine, right, and we make Cl2, now the energy that releases, that will be shown as like minus delta H, right? Minus delta H. If we talk about the decomposition, the energy required for decomposition of the bond, that process is called the endothermic reaction. Right? Like for example, here we are having H and H. This is a bond, right? This is a composition. But if we break this, this will be like this. So the energy required for the decomposition of a bond, that is called the endothermic reaction, right? And this is shown as plus delta H, right? So this is a breaking and composition of the bond, that is a bond energy. Now we are having some factors that are affecting bond energy. Factors, right? Number one factor, that is the bond size. Now how bond size affect the bond energy? Like for example, we are having H and H, right? That is the H2, and here we are having chlorine plus chlorine, that is a Cl2. They are having less bond size, or we can say less distance or less bond distance. So if they are having less bond distance, so here we will need the high bond energy. For example, it's like the bond distance or bond size is inversely proportional to the bond energy. Now here we feel chlorine is having the high bond distance, so it will have the, we can say, the low bond energy, like it will need the low energy for breaking this bond. So the bond and distance is directly proportional to the bond energy. So this was the one, that was the bond size. And number two factor, that is the polarizability. What is polarizability? Polarizability, which means it depends upon the it depends upon the electronegativity. It depends upon the electronegativity. How? Like for example, we are having hydrogen and fluorine, hydrogen and chlorine, and hydrogen and iodine, right? Hydrogen having 2.1 electronegativity, it is having 4. This is having chlorine having 3, and this is having 2.1, 2.1, and it is having 2.6, right? Yes. Now if we do this, so there will be the difference will be the 2.9 difference will be there, right? So, and here the difference will be the 1.1, no, 1.9, right? And here the difference will be the 0.5. So you can see here it is having more electronegativity. Hydrogen fluorine having more electronegative if you compare with these both. So it will be having high bond energy, which means the electronegativity of any molecule is directly proportional to the bond energy. If these both are having less energy or less electronegativity, so it will be having less bond energy, right? So these were the two factors, and number three factor, that is the multiplication of the bond of one mole. For example, like H and H, and C and nitrogen, right? Now here you can see these are having one bond, two bonds, and three bonds, right? So here, that is the number of bonds is directly proportional to the bond energy. Like if it's having one bond, so it will be having the, like it is having less bond, right? One, if you compare with these both, so it will be having less energy, less bond energy, and more bond energy will be having nitrogen having more bond energy if we compare with these both. So the number of bonds is directly proportional to the bond energy. So these are the factors that are affecting the bond energy.